back to the watch, and it's not going to get better yet.
Yet. This is the thing. Gamergate 2 is awesome because it's this big pushback. It's brought the problems of the woke infestation in media to the forefront, and there seems to be a strong kind of galvanization in the gaming community where people are rejecting the woke crap, pushing back, and we're seeing just signs of it, like the Sweet Baby Ink Detected curator group. Just one small example of this. 300,000 strong at the moment, over 300,000. That's actually, I feel, just a smaller subset of the overall people that are fed up with this, because people who are willing to sign up to the curator group, it's probably only going to be like 10% at most. In terms of call to actions, get people to, do something, like stay on a page or subscribe and everything. Whenever there's usually it's around only 2% that actually do it. And so if we go super generous 10%, there's probably 3 million people or more that are aware of this and hate it.
Well, I'm sure Nathan would agree. 300,000 and 1 million more well on their way.
Haha.
I don't get it.
Prequels.
Prequel joke.
Okay.
Clones.
Aha. Aha.
You can tell who's
Okay, so even with this pushback, right? Pretend that all the game devs see the problem with the woke stuff. We just did a video covering the Game Developers Conference, GDC, topics, and it's insane the amount of woke propaganda that is just flooding that space, okay? And so these are the type of people that have fooled a lot of the game developers that seem completely disconnected from their audience to think diversity sells, woke propaganda will make the game sell. And only now are they starting to see, with these huge failures, Forspoken, Suicide Squad, what
Saints Row.
Saints Row.
Oh! Talk about, they made it literally the antithesis of what Saints Row
I know,
is.
I enjoyed the Saints Row series. Right, they've seen massive failures like that. They are seeing games that just have sexy women in, Stellar Blade seems like it's going to get a lot of attention, and AA Studios doing well. That some might get the message. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of them are. I think a lot of them are getting entrenched, and they are, because a lot of them, it's not about not working with these, consultancy groups. Their actual, leadership structure are made of activists. They're not going to change. And so they'll keep pushing that woke crap. It'll keep failing. Even if a lot of the developers and everything, okay, get rid of the woke crap. They got the message now, right? How long does it take to make a game, Nathan? Like a big game?
Like 8 years, between 4 to 8 years.
Between 4 to 8 years, the average being 6 years in development.
That long?
Yeah.
And then they just die overnight?
Yeah.
That can't be a feasible business model.
Oh, well, it's not.
There are problems with the AAA gaming development thing. We have a video on this dark secret of what's ruining AAA game development, right? But that means at the most optimistic kind of turnaround where you see the industry change in response to what's happening now, 4 years. Mark Kern on the Side Scrollers podcast, love the Side Scrollers podcast, started in Craig and Blabs and everyone. He talks about this. Yeah, there's a video clip. You can check it out on Side Scrollers. They have a clip on Twitter where Mark basically explains that, it's going to take still going to take a minute for it to process and churn through, which basically means buckle up, everyone. Okay, it's not over yet. You need to keep the pressure on. If you see this woke crap, reject it, and there's going to be a time process to weed it all through. Yeah. And we're going to see this in film as well, by the way, with woke Disney and all that, where, well, one, Disney hasn't learned from this, they're still pushing through, but all the projects in development, right, have all this stuff entrenched in them, and to get new projects, still going to take 2-3 years to make films, like big budget films, and so buckle up. We gotta get through this dark time.
I wouldn't say I'm buckling up, more like closing the lid on my coffin. Lay me down to rest.
What about clenching your butt cheeks?
I do feel sodomized by these people.
They do like to screw gamers up.
Yeah.
Screw gamers, because gamers want good games, and we're getting slop. And so the way to do it is just stay vigilant, stay on watch, right? And
That's what we say at the end of the videos.
It is, right? And reject the woke crap. Lots of good games are already there you can enjoy, and there will be some good games coming out, because there are projects in development by studios that do not want a bar of this nonsense.
I've been playing religiously a game called Dawn of War. It's a Warhammer RTS that came out 20 years ago. It's so good.
Dragon's Dogma 2. There's no warning signs of any woke crap in it. It looks like just an honest. It's Japanese, which they usually don't have a bar of it. There's warning signs, but usually they don't. And one of the signs that kind of shows that Dragon's Dogma isn't going to have any of this stuff is the boob and butt slider that they have in it. Like the fact that they're given gamers the opportunity, like choice to make very sexy women if they want, is a sign that Dragon's Dogma 2 isn't going to have a bar of this nonsense.
They will likely have body type X and Y, but
I wonder. We'll find out if it'll have X and Y.
Or type 1, type 2.
Type 1, type 2.
I
Now, by the way,
X and Y, because then it's,
that the reason why Japanese game developers do that is not because they agree with any of it. They get told Western audiences expect this. Okay, you need to do it, and they just go. Well,
it's localization as well. Like, I don't know if it's the same with the Japanese.
Yes, I bet it's not. I bet in Japan it's just male, female.
But I love how the woke people who started the body type A and B thing, that's a microaggression in itself. Why is body type A always men? Huh? Why have men always got to come first?
Oh,
Where's C?
Yeah. Oh.
And so let's listen to some of what Mark says here.
Do you see a way to get out of this? Like, what does it take?
It's going to take a cycle or two, because games take a lot longer.
A cycle or two. It actually might take longer. Like when we were saying 4 years, that was the optimistic projection. It could be closer to 8 to 10 years. 8 to 10 years.
Yay! 2 more election cycles. Can't wait for Trump's 3rd term.
What were you saying, Griffin?
I forgot now. But yeah, sorry, it just baffled me. But yes, it would take a while. Sorry.
That's right. And I think in games, it's happening slower for 2 reasons. One is games take longer to make. It takes 7 years to do an original IP game now from scratch.
7 years original IP game, and like you would know, I want to know what Mark's working on now.
He hasn't worked on anything for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are game devs that are, producing stuff.
Mark Wahlberg?
No, Mark Kern.
Oh, that's
He's
him?
talking.
Okay, my bad.
He was one of the lead developers in World of Warcraft, man.
Really?
Yeah.
He made the drow.
Well, he was the he was one of the ones that he gave us the Blood Elves, right? He was helming the ship to make that decision and stuff. And so one of the main guys overseeing World of Warcraft.
That man is responsible for so much virginity in the world.
And the other reason is that it's really the story components that are the most infected. Not the gameplay, not the programming teams. It's really the writing and story component. And that's not like in a movie where it's like 100% of what you do, or the vast majority of what you do is storytelling. That's a component of a video game.
The thing is, though, the storytelling stuff, right? How does it work in game? Because with film development, that's where you start, and everything is built on top of that, right? Story was one of the first things.
It depends on the game.
Depends on the game.
Because I've heard of writers who, I know one guy, old person in locally, basically gets put on at the last 6 months of a cycle to fix all the broken story, because it's just in shards and they have to put it together. Usually it is gameplay or mechanics first, and then they add in elements of story. The only times I've seen story go first was with like The Walking Dead and those story-driven games is where the story goes first. But yeah, it is more I completely agree with what I said. It is the narrative-driven stuff
is where the big problem is. And it seems like, okay, maybe if there is a game somewhat in partial development, you could try and fix story elements, and you have assets you can still use. And
that's the thing. I reckon they could quite easily, if they wanted to, change stuff like to the last minute. Because I know, like Assassin's Creed, most of the voice acting isn't done until later in production. Most of it's just like voice AI generated, text for most of it, and then they just change it all kind of in the end. So
you can't really do that in film.
No.
But with video games, so maybe I wonder. I'm still looking for hope, right? That there could be some game companies. If game companies were smart and they saw what's happening with Gamergate 2, their massive rejection of woke crap, they just clean house. If they were smart, they would clean house. It's like, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the human resources department, you're fired. Just cull, But and Mark has been actually mentioning this on Twitter today. Is that huge amounts of game workers, devs and everything are losing jobs. Like thousands of jobs getting lost. But the people who aren't losing their jobs are the woke consultants and the diversity, equity, inclusion branch of the companies, and which is insane. And it's saying, if you want to fix your company, that's the group you need to get rid of. Like, fire them. And if they fire them and rework story and writing, they might have a chance to save themselves.
And so I think that's why it's slower in games, but it's going to get worse before it gets better.
I think the issue too is the fact that the narrative-driven people now are all kind of in their little bubble. So if you cleared house, you have to make sure you hire new people that don't have the same agenda-driven politics, because everyone else who doesn't agree with that have lost their jobs and they're no longer in the industry anymore. You have to bring those people back.
I mean, if they want to look for writers that have some level of experience that aren't into the work stuff, look to indie authors, I reckon. Reach out to indie authors that are making their own stuff and usually get rejected from any chance of being able to publish in the mainstream industry because they're either too white or they don't have enough diversity in their books.
I thought you said Indian authors for a second.
No.
No, they're all working on Goat Simulator.
Indie authors.
Okay, my bad.
And they can actually vet if they got the props or not by reading. They got the material right there. Like the first few pages, usually free on Amazon. You can tell if a writer actually has some, merit or talent just by looking through the first page, honestly. And there's a huge a resource that's, I feel, untapped, that they could skip the whole diversity, hiring for writers.
Yeah. I just think it's so ingrained in their culture and hiring practices. It's going to be, like Grums is saying a lot, like it's going to take quite a few years for them to figure out the pressure points that are causing that and to actually clear out and like it's because I feel like the people in charge as well can't. We obviously see what the issues are, but they don't. That's the other issue.
To me, this
As
is
an
baffling.
executive, I don't think they see
How
it.
could you be an executive of a game company and not notice what's been going on online about gaming recently?
Because half of them don't even play video games. So they don't even know.
Why do they have their jobs?
Because they are backstabbers and terrible people.
I like to imagine some sort of hooded Palpatine-esque figure in their ear saying, "Yes, do it."
Yeah, exactly.
Kill it again.
I mean, look, this is the bizarre thing, because I think you might be right there, Nathan, where it's bonkers that these CEOs, the people who are in charge of Volition, right, when they were told, wokeness is popular, do it, right? And they just like, sure, and went along with it, right? And they got fooled so much. Now, you don't have a job now, do you? But would you think even now's different? Like, how could you miss Gamergate 2 and how wild Twitter has been?
Because when you have co-workers and people around you saying, look at those bigoted...
Exactly, the harassment campaign against our consultants.
I don't want to be part of that.
Yep. They're just trying to get, diversity, equity, inclusion officers like me fired. It's a harassment campaign against me, so don't listen to them.
Exactly.
Well,
and they listen.
And as far as hope goes, it's usually a couple of rocks that start the avalanche, right? The vampire game, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, they tanked the entire team because they were too woke.
They did. There are some examples where there is some cleaning house. Not enough, it seems like. We will see, though.
Circling the wagons right now, they're doubling down, and it's getting worse internally for teams right now.
So that's actually true. So instead of learning from this, there's some game, companies that are in the middle of development that instead of learning from it, they're trying to hide. And we'll do a video on that. I got a video where a big example of they're just trying to clean house, delete comments, and go under a rock to try and hide that they're complete woke agenda stuff. And this is bizarre to me. You would only do that if you know that this element of your game is toxic to gamers, that they don't want a bar of it. You wouldn't be trying to hide it if you didn't know that there wasn't pushback to it. But they are, And so they just want to get one over on gamers to try and hide the fact there's going to be a woke mess so that they can fool people into buying it when it first comes out.
Yep.
And then it's like, we got the propaganda through.
They can't escape this by hiding under a rock, because underneath that rock is a basement with a gamer in it. And we're waiting.
Are we looking at 5 years, 8 years? I mean, are we going to be
You're looking at like 2 cycles. So that's going to be. I mean, these games are already in production, so I think you're looking at 4 years, 3 to 4 years.
That's lowest projection. It's like between 4 to 10, I think.
Maybe a little longer. It depends before you see any sort of economic impact here.
To the next generation that will benefit from our sacrifice. We will wage this war for the next generation. You get what you're going to say?
I was just like, it's just the cost that we're going through this, the amount of knowledge, information is going to be lost from all these people. Because here's the thing, when they hired all these new people, we lost all the veterans who had made all the classic games 10 years ago, who have all this insider knowledge, and they've gone off now. And these new people,
cross-pollination.
yeah, and now people are coming up now to learn all those things again or lose it completely, and that's why things like games suck at launch, and the reason why we have so many bugs and issues, and because they don't know how to make the games. So.
And oftentimes they look worse than games that were released years ago.
Because they don't have the skill or the talent.
They compared what Suicide Squad looked like to one of the previous Arkham games. The Arkham one looked better. And it's just like, what's going on?
Yeah. So that's the other thing too. It's like, I'm sad because they'll clear house, we'll lose information because obviously there's people cross-pollinated with the veterans, but then we're going to have this new generation coming in to also make the games that aren't going to have, we're going to have another learning period basically.
And unless they were smart and just rehired the veterans they axed.
But also people are old now, and some of them are retired. And
Because these games are already funded, so it doesn't matter that ESG is drying up and all that stuff.
And they're funded mostly by ESG, and they've already ticked the checkbox. So even if they wanted to change, legally they wouldn't be able to, because then the funding would get pulled and they wouldn't be able to make the game.
Exactly.
They are screwed. We talked about this in the dark secret that's ruining AAA games. Check out that video, right? AAA gaming is in a death spiral that a lot of them cannot get out of because of ESG funding infection. You're laughing?
Yeah, like a whirlpool. It just pulls them down.
I know. They get what they deserve.
You're going to see the stuff come out. Luckily, it's going to be mostly just on the story end. You know, it's not going to... the gameplay stuff, AAA has a different problem. They have a problem with lack of innovation and churning out the same stuff and playing it way too safe. But you're mostly going to see it on the story side. And it's going to be a long time, unfortunately.
So, like, that's the message. They should buckle up. Don't, slack in your vision. But it's not hard. All you have to do is say, reject the woke crap. I'm not going to play it. I don't need to give you my money. And that is not harassment, right? They can't do anything else. They are powerless against the gamer that just says, I'll play a different game.
Yeah, so don't give your money to them. Give your money to us.
You could if you want, become a member here on Night's Watch, support us, and that helps out a lot as we continue to stay on watch.